Hello and welcome to this week's recruitment discussion with Jump Advisory Group. As always, if you can hear me, please put a message into the chat box or the question box so we can know that we're not talking to ourselves. Weekly, we have been talking hugely about the value of data. The more recently, data has been described as a new currency. That's oil or gas, but is it really a new currency? But dare I say that things like Brexit was swung purely on the power of data by targeting certain voters. So the right data creates what we would call new value exchange between brands, and data is the catalyst to drive the value of that exchange up. So companies like Google, Facebook, etc. have been purchasing data for years to get an insight on their buyers, drive value, and generate revenue. So the question is, why has recruitment always feared using data, and does it really know what data it's sat on to really move forward? So today we've been joined by Kevin Flowers and Chris Kendrick of Mercury XRM, who are going to demystify this subject for us and help us to understand just how much an asset data truly is. So Mercury XRM, they're a leading cloud-based technology company that leverages Microsoft D365 platform to provide sort of cutting-edge technology. They are a × Microsoft Gold partner, which produces, with a product that also is certified by Microsoft. And in 2019, they were shortlisted for a Microsoft Gold Partner of the Year award. They're also a LinkedIn partner and have multiple integrations with LinkedIn. And they have a headcount of just over 50 with offices in Birmingham, London, Boston, and Sydney, which sort of Birmingham always sounds a little bit different in that sort of collage of towns and cities. And from there, so let me hand over to Kevin and Chris so they can introduce themselves while the Jump team sit back for a change and let the data do the talking. Chris, Kevin, over to you guys.
Thanks very much, Howard, and good morning, everyone. And yeah, good to be here and to share some thoughts and ideas. So yeah, my name is Kevin Flower. I'm part of the sales team at Mercury. Been working in the rec tech space for a number of years, and have been at Mercury now for 4 of those. So yeah, very good to be here.
And I'm Chris Kendrick. I'm the CEO and the founder of Mercury. I've worked in the recruitment industry since '96. Ran a recruitment business which went on to sell to the Harvey Nash group of companies. But prior to that, we started and launched Mercury XRM as a recruitment technology business, which we'll talk to and allude to today. But this is not going to be a demo. This is not going to be a sales pitch. Really, what we want to talk to you about is where we see the future of technology and some of the considerations that you needed to be making today or even yesterday in some cases to enable what technology is going to be all about and enable you to do in the future.
Yeah, so I guess the question that we're all asking is it a big jump to what you need to consider today for tomorrow? And I guess the answer is ultimately no. But there are many things that we need to consider. And technology is evolving fast, but and we may think that it's back from when we were younger and thinking it's advanced really at pace, but we haven't even tipped the edge of the iceberg yet. So in terms of data and where that resides and the importance of that in the future.
So let's start that. Let's start to look at that and how that sort of works. So let's start to look at where data is stored by most companies and why most companies don't understand the data that they actually have at their fingertips.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to just move on to onto the first slide there and
just I will
talk
do.
about?
I'm just going to check. Is that coming through? Okay, just check the slide deck showing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so yeah, I suppose coming back to that then. So I think before we just jump into data, I think the important thing to understand is that the technology that's available, that's coming to us, is going to become available to us very quickly. There's a lot of great technology, but when we start to talk about analytics, automation, robotic process automation, RPA software, it's so important that our data is in the right place. So as we go into that, the other thing is, as recruitment business owners and business leaders, you'll understand that you'll be looking ultimately at an event or an exit for your business, and the value levers that have been looked at to date are changing. And those value levers will definitely now start to, more than they have previously, start to consider what the data, the digital strategy is for the business, to ensure that you're able to, as we all know, recruitment is changing year on year. It will change significantly from a technology perspective in the years to come. Many of the roles that we have within our businesses will have opportunity for automation, not necessarily to replace, but to augment. And what's going to drive all of that then is this data strategy, and that's where we wanted to jump into. So talking about data in recruitment businesses at present, we use lots of different systems. We use CRM systems, we use telephony, we use finance systems. Some of us will have marketing automation platforms, we use LinkedIn. Within all of that, we've also got our office productivity systems. So for those that use Zoom or possibly Teams, we've also got our email and our instant messaging that goes within it. We're building up lots of data. In some cases, we're harnessing it and capturing it. In many cases, we're keeping it in multiple different siloed data stores. And that's fine in terms of capturing that data for your point of line business application. But actually, when we come to leverage that and learn from that data, unless it's all accessible by the technology they're going to use, it's going to become very invaluable and disparate. So when we're thinking about where we're keeping our data, essentially, we want to try and keep wherever possible in one place. How can we get the insights that are going to enable us to make the better decisions tomorrow by leveraging all of that data and bringing it to one place? We talked about data being the new currency, whether that's oil or gold or whatever. We are building huge data on a daily basis. There's been many talks before us about this, but in your case, from a recruitment perspective, there's many different places that it sits. Where this quickly then transitions is enabling businesses to be able to make better insights and better decisions. And so we want to spend a little bit of time just talking about data and intelligence and essentially the differences that will make to your businesses. And there's a number of different things to consider here. So obviously, a lot of the time we talk and we focus to start with customers. I'd like to start with employees to start with. So mental well-being, we're talking, and it's interesting, of course, the way that we're all working at the moment, spending probably far much time in one room in our home. But many of our employees are doing the same, and we need to consider the hours that they're spending, the tools that they're using, and what it is they're doing. Have you got the tools to be able to understand that? And at the end of this session, and this is only going to be quite a short session, we are going to do a quick demo for you, not on anything that we sell, but actually a tool that's likely to be available to all of you today. You might not be aware of it, and I think it will be insightful, shall we say, when you open it up and you start to dig into it. But this is the power of the tool that we'll show you is only possible because all of that data is running through the same place at the moment. And for many of you, that will be the case, actually. It's going to start to show you your levels of focus, time, collaboration, your quiet days, how much time you've got to spend time and one-to-ones with people within your business that are important to you. And ultimately, it's going to start showing you how effective you are. And in some cases of your employees, potentially the risk of burnout. Then when we talk about engaging customers, how using the data that you've got available, can you understand how you engage your next best customer? What's your next best action? What should you be doing next based on the intelligence of what's gone before? Who are your better customers? If I ask people who their best customers are, typically people will normally, much like they do with their consultants, they'll give me the name of the client that spends the most with them or the consultant that bills the most. But actually there's many more elements to it. There's many more ways that you'll measure that client, not only in terms of payment terms, but actually what effort goes into that customer? How many roles do they give you that you don't work on exclusively, that you're in a race with, where you're working and sending CVs and in some cases into a little bit of a black hole? Ultimately, you know that more effort will result in more revenue, but how can we start to measure the better business, and how can we understand what it is about those customers or what you do with those customers that makes them better or worse? When we talk about your offerings and your operational efficiencies, how can we learn from the data that you have available within your environment to then trigger automation, which alleviates the time that you spent to actually get to the best candidates? So, we should expect to see in the recruitment industry the machine learning from the data that you have to suggest the next best candidate to call. But actually, the call's been scheduled for you already because the RPA and the chatbot automation has actually said to a candidate, we believe you're right for this role. We'd like to discuss it with you. Here's your consultant's availability of calendar. Can you book a slot? And from there, then, the one thing the machine will not do in the future, and I think it's going to really struggle to do, is to tell the story. As salespeople, as recruiters, we're storytellers. We sell the benefits of an organization to a candidate. We sell the strengths of the candidate to the organization, and the machine can't do that. But what the machine can do is it can match, and it will get better at doing that. It can automate the outreach. It can arrange the availability of a conversation. It can give you the insights as to why that candidate might be looking in the market before that candidate even possibly knows they are looking themselves. It can look at trends of companies they work for, they have worked for. These are all things that data will be able to drive businesses to be able to do. How can we then leverage that to optimize the efficiencies with automation? And there are tools in market that do that at present. So when we're talking about this, products, service offerings, they will change for us as well, because we'll have technology to enable that as well. We might consider a world where marketing automation is actually our main source of candidate attraction. The auto matching is actually done between the candidate and the client and the data that they provide to us. And actually, as recruiters, all we have to do is sell the story. We have to put the two together. We have to take them both on that journey as to why it's the right role for them or why it's the right candidate for the client. But again, it's the data and the intelligence that can be captured to enable us to do that. So taking that one step back, when we talk about those data silos, some of those decisions that you need to be thinking about today, irrespective of what CRM system you use, and there are others other than Mercury. So, making sure that the right information that you've got is coming into the right place, making sure your consultants are using the system to the best of their ability, because the information that they're not putting into the system at the moment and the information that you're not automatically capturing through automation could become a blocker for you. I think then when we start to consider other industries and other examples, COVID vaccines is probably a great example. The technology has been there for some time, clearly, to create these vaccines, but we can only start to understand that once the data is available to us. And if you look at the amazing work that has been happening over the variants in the last 6 to 9 months, the sheer volume of data that we've collected, actually in the UK, where for some of this we've pioneered some of this research, has enabled us to move and enable to be quicker. But you can't just ask for the technology to be available. You've got to drive that technology with the data that's been made available to you. So
before you move on there,
sorry,
you mentioned a point there which I thought was really interesting, that you talked about consultant burnout, and you talked about using data. One of the big things that everyone's been talking about is obviously the well-being of people within work. Talk to us about how data can help identify consultants that may be heading towards burnout.
Yeah, so I think there's quite a lot that we can look at, and actually I think the demonstration, when we throw it up, will give you some insights. I think if I were to show you mine, it would be quite an interesting story for you actually. But because your information is going through Office 365 and Microsoft 365 in many cases, not in all cases, but in most cases. For example, the Exchange server is tracking how quickly you're opening an email. It's already tracking the speed at which it takes to respond. If you're joining Teams meetings at the moment, I can tell you for a fact that Teams knows what you're doing during that meeting. If you're tapping away on an IM to one of your colleagues because you're inundated for the next meeting you're trying to prep for, whilst you're stuck on a Teams meeting with Teams fatigue at the moment, it can see that. It can see whether you join meetings on time. It can see whether you're the person inviting people to meetings or the other way around. And it uses all of these in combination to understand how much time you've got to focus. It looks at the hours of the day that you're working. It looks at the fact that you respond to an email at 11 o'clock at night. And it puts all of these factors into, and it basically tells you, and we'll demonstrate this to you actually, it can show you just how hard you're working and effectively how smart you're working as well. And if you can identify those trends and understand those things before it starts to become someone feeling a bit stressed, that's where we can hopefully start to address some of those mental awareness and well-being issues.
Does that include sort of using 365 as on a platform through a laptop, etc.? I've got mine coming through my phone, etc., etc. Does it pick up on your phone? Does it pick up on every tool that you use where you're interacting through 365 to measure your, I suppose, usage and measure your stress levels?
Absolutely. And the fact that just before you go to bed at night, you're probably still respond to an email, and when you wake up in the morning, it's one of the first things that you still check. You know, irrespective of the device that you're looking this on, this information is being tracked. And
Chris, sometimes when you say things like automation and machine learning, and you talk about all the different systems we have, it can be quite scary when you only have maybe one system, or you're not sure how they talk to each other. Where do you start if you're in a position where you've got very basic, or you're using very basic tools? Where do you start? Because some of this is fantastic, but it may seem light years away from where some people are.
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing, actually. This shouldn't be as daunting as it is. So, you know, irrespective of the platform that you choose, but in the case of Microsoft, all of these tools are available, many of these tools from Microsoft 365 and other systems that you will plug into. It's just asking the right questions, really, as to where that data sits and where it will be accessible from. The good thing is there's a lot of this enterprise technology that's available now, that's available to anyone at any budget, really. If you look, the risk here is the rise of things like shadow IT. So, you know, shadow IT is anyone in any business can go and procure any system because they sign up for a free trial. And before you know it, you've got all of these fancy applications within the business. And individually, they've got great use cases. And individually, they'll have internal champions. You know, you might use a Trello board or Monday.com, and it's a way of scheduling your work. But the problem is you start to create silos of data. And not just silos of data, but non-integrated systems as well. So the decisions that you make to enable tomorrow just need to start thinking about what that environment and technology looks like today. And it shouldn't be a daunting journey. It should be an easy journey for you to go on. It's just making the right questions
Chris,
from the outset.
Just a quick question for you, if you don't mind. I think you've heard this many times. I've worked with a lot of recruitment businesses over the years, and I've yet to meet a recruitment business that doesn't think their CRM system is rubbish. And we all know that the CRM systems are all generally extremely good. It's the issue is operators. In other words, you made a comment about making sure consultants are placing data into the system. Systems are generally only as good as the data that's input into them. How do we educate our colleagues to make certain that they are placing data in the system? Is it the case that they just simply at this point find it an admin task and don't yet see the value?
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, isn't it? You have to give something that better enables them to do their role. And with CRMs, you know, they can be quite laborious to put information into in certain cases. You need to demonstrate the value that putting that data in gives them in return. Whether that's better analytics on here's your performance, if you did this, or your what if scenarios, what's the information that we can give them to enable them to do their job better, what's the next best action, and if we can tell them that, they'll make more money. So I think there's an element of, as organizations buying into, we all are responsible for coding candidates. You know, there is a lot of automation around coding candidates, there's a lot of parsing capability available, but still the person that speaks to the candidate is best placed to refine those codes. Then the speed at which you can get to those candidates. So we changed our software years ago. It's where Mercury was built from in the recruitment business that I was running at the time. It was a barrier. The CRM we used was a clear barrier. So we changed that. We developed our own software to do it. But you have to find the value to the person of putting the data in. And if you can understand what it is that you can give them in return for that data, whether it's better candidate matching, demonstration that their time to first CV has reduced month on month, year on year for the last 3 years, and giving them the feedback that we are more profitable with less calls made, that's the value that you ideally want to be able to return.
So do you think that, I mean, we always say bonus plans dictate behavior. I've never yet seen a bonus or commission plan that has any reference to inputting data into a CRM system. And given the value that you are identifying here, is this something that business owners need to be thinking about? Because it tends to be that consultants will behave in a certain way relative to their potential income. So when we look at bonus plans, should we be considering elements of those bonus plans related to this data input?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's an element of one of our clients, for example, one of their benefits is training, whereas in other organizations, training is seen as something that you have to do. I think in other businesses that we work with, they'll bonus people, or they'll give them benefits based on technology. So, you know, LinkedIn recruiter seats, you achieve a certain level, we'll invest in that for you. And if you look at, with the right level of integration, data in one place, with LinkedIn integration, you can bring all of the in-mails from all of your colleagues into one place. You can start to look at which people have got the most engagement, who's active in market, because everyone's using that integrated software. The bonus might be have the right behaviors, do the right data input, and we'll give you the tools and technologies. If you look at automation software, we can help automate your processes by doing X, Y, and Z. That's the benefit to you. But we can't do this as a business without you putting the data in to start with. But there's a lot of data automation that we can do as well, and collection collectively.
I think to answer that, Paul, and as well to help you on the answer on that, is that when I was running a business, you know, when I first took over the business, they had no CRM and they had a very mistrust of data. And then after 6 months of putting data in, when we were starting to forecast, where the consultants, I'm forecasting this, and you're saying, well, that client takes 12 weeks to make a placement, that takes 4 weeks to make a placement, that client takes 35 CVs to get XYZ, all of a sudden they started to realize where they could invest their time. And what we found was when they started to invest their time with the proper clients in the proper area, they all started to fill the CRM in. So there's that what's in it for me needs to be proved, not just populate your data because I'm telling you to do that. They have to see the reason why they're populating the data. And once you can start to have enough data, and I would say 6 months is probably when it starts to really start to show what the patterns are, then you can start to dictate to your staff what they're doing and how that works. And that's a very different place to be than it is just saying put data into the system just because you want it. So if you're not using that data, then people don't see the benefit of it. If you use it to benefit them, they see the reasons why they start to put it in.
Accentuate the benefits, absolutely.
I think the other point, parallel to that, Howard, for me, and I don't know whether, Chris, you see a lot of this, but there's so much data in the CRM, and you talk about the benefit. You know, if you're using the data for business development, and you're therefore, you know, using it to acquire clients, but, you know, grow your existing client relationships, then there's a tangible benefit there. And I think sometimes we do forget just what data is stored in most CRMs. And I guess it's the old thing about, you know, rubbish in, rubbish out, and everything else. But if you're putting good data in there, you know, when you've done a campaign for your client, you could easily sit down with a client after and do a bit of a wash up and say, you know, we attracted this amount of candidates. This is the sifting process. This is how many got through SIFT. This is how many we interviewed. This is how many we screened. These are where the candidates came from. This is the background. These are the 3 things why they were interested in you as an organization. And we just don't do that. We met the placement, we get the deal done, and then we walk away and move on to the next one. And I think sometimes there's so much data in the CRM that we could really use that intelligently to grow the client relationship and give them some real value add.
I think so, and taking a look at the journey of how much effort you have to put in to make that placement, and then actually calculate the true profitability of those deals.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is it needn't be lots of data that we put in. The simple linking of a candidate to a job, even the ones that aren't suitable, the machine in the future will be able to learn on, well, that candidate was added to it but never got submitted. However, these 3 did. The machine will look at those unstructured CVs, that's the data that you hold, and try and determine, based on location, client sector, and everything else, why those candidates weren't put forward. And actually, that's the prediction engine that will come about and people will be able to leverage in the future. It's these candidates for this reason. And the only thing the recruiter had to do there was just link the candidates to the role and maybe reject them if they weren't right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the bit about the time and effort on a client is really important. And I've been doing that with one of my clients recently. It's just, you know, why would you work every client if some of those clients you put in a lot of effort in, and one, the relationship's not going to go anywhere, but secondly, you work in roles that you never fill, or your chance of filling it is really low. So I love that you know, your example there about using data to measure the profitability and the return on investment with a client.
I think we all have to be a bit more selfish with our time as well, don't we? So we're pretty busy. I think on that, it'd be good to get to some of these demos, and we can start to show you some of this infused artificial intelligence with tools that you'll use today. So there's a couple of applications we quickly wanted to show you.
Let's move forward then, Chris.
Yeah, let's do that. So, I mean, this is effectively, though, what we were talking about. Lots of different clouds, lots of fragmented data. As much as possible, we can bring this into one place, you will get huge benefits in the future. And this is what we're saying. This isn't you're going to miss out right now, but you could miss out in 12 to 18 months' time. So start thinking about these things now. So, Kevin, I think you're going to share your screen, and we're going to jump into a couple of examples, are we?
Yeah, so let me share my screen quickly here. Hopefully I'm going to share the right screen. Can you see that?
Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, so this is obviously Office 365, but one of the applications that Chris was talking about earlier is My Analytics. So My Analytics, you'll have it available to you today, and essentially what it's doing is analyzing all of your activities across the Microsoft platform and coming together to calculate your ability to focus, your collaboration, how much time you're spending in certain times, how much time perhaps you're not spending, or you've got quiet time. So here you'll be able to see some of that. So this is mine. I don't want Chris to judge me on this, but just you can start to see here my time to focus, how many quiet days in the last month that I've had, so where I've had no activity, where my collaboration is hitting, and who my main collaborators are. And then it's giving you suggestions on how to better perhaps improve your well-being. So again, if I can start to drill into each individual area here, you can start to see your weekly average versus time that you have available to perhaps better focus versus the time that you're collaborating with your colleagues and your clients. And then you can start to see trends over a given period of time as well. So I'm reasonably consistent there. Well-being, how many quiet days that you've had where you're not working. So I've had a couple of Sundays this month, which thanks, Chris. So you can start to, and then you can start to split out your percentage here by the number of meetings versus emails and chats. And then, as Chris mentioned earlier, what you're doing when you're in meetings. Are you starting to talk and plan for other activities? Are you reading emails? Are you having chats with your colleagues? And then you can start to see who.
Yeah. Can I ask you, as you're going through this, do companies who use this data, do they have targets for what good looks like? So is it good that you're spending 43% focus time, or should that be 50% or 20%, or does that not apply in this situation?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, and Chris, you may have an absolute answer on that, but I think it is. If you looked at Chris's by comparison, he would be collaborating a whole lot higher than having time to focus. So, are other people taking your time more than you are enabling yourself to do the things that you need to do? So focus time is, am I spending time and responding to the things that I need to do? Am I providing the service to my clients that I need to provide? Or am I tied up in meetings 100% of the time and not able to do the other things that I need to do? Okay. So there probably isn't a good answer to that. It's just about you finding the balance. And if you're walking away at the end of the week thinking, I didn't have time to do that this week, actually, and that you'll immediately be able to see why, and it might be because you don't have enough time to focus on the other things that you need to spend time doing. Yeah. And then you can start to see some of people who you're collaborating with, and it will give you suggestions of how to do that. And as Chris mentioned, there is an option there to start to make sure you can build your team into My Analytics. So you can start to say, am I spending enough time with my colleagues? So as a business leader, you might want to ensure that you're monitoring your time spent with your colleagues and whether that's effective enough. And then here you can start to see other trends around collaboration. Here, how many times I'm the person that's sending the invite. Is it last minute, or are we planning ahead? what's your attendance like? Are you attending on time? What hours are you working in? And you can drill into all of this as well. So there's a lot of data and insight, as Chris said, to start to give you perhaps some insight into where you or your colleagues might be suffering whilst working away from the office.
And does this measure it both on your desktop or your MacBook and then your phone? Because so many of us spend quite a bit of time on our phones and then revert back to a desktop, but does it measure both?
It will be absolutely that, yeah. So if you're responding in Teams or in Outlook, whether you're doing it from your mobile device or from your laptop or tablet device, then it's completely monitoring your activity. So if you are, as Chris mentioned, sitting in bed at 11 o'clock responding to your emails, it is monitoring that.
And is that irrespective whether you've integrated your Outlook into, say your iPhone, or are you using the Microsoft app to get into your 365? Because obviously I don't use the 365 app. I just integrate my emails into my iPhone, so I don't have to open an app. It saves me one less thing to open. Does that also register that as well?
It will be,
yeah.
yeah.
It's tracking it all at that server level. And again, I suppose one of the reasons we wanted to show this is, first of all, open it up after you finish this session, because it's insightful. But actually, it's a great example of, because all the traffic is coming through your Exchange server. We use Teams heavily. We use Teams for our telephony. We use it for our instant messaging. Obviously, it's got visibility of our Outlook calendar for all of our meetings, irrespective of that. So, there's so much of your productivity that runs through this system at the moment. It's giving you the insights on it. So it's just an example of, because this is harnessing data that's now been, this is showing last 4 weeks, but this will go back in time. This can show you years, so it can start to show you trends as well. So
it'd be really interesting just to ask the question to all the audience, really, just in case. Well, it'd be just interesting to know how many people are using this, and if people were aware. So please feel free to sort of chat away and let us know. The
answer to that is if you are using it, if you put your hand up, metaphorically speaking, on the Zoom chat bar, then we'll see how many people are using it. I see this flash up on my weekly emails, but I never actually I didn't realize there's a whole sort of suite of product behind it that I could use.
I didn't, Howard.
So Microsoft have taken this even further now. So there was news recently of something called Microsoft Viva that was announced the other week. So, and this is all coming back now to employee experience and well-being. So it'll be the insights and analytics that we're talking about here. It will be learning. So you'll be able to do onboarding, learning content within this platform as well. And it's all going to sit within this, nothing that we sell. It's all going to sit within this application. So this is Microsoft taking the lead now on employee well-being, but it's such an interesting tool. And if you've got people within your org structure that report into you, you'll see the additional tab of leadership. It'll tell you how often you're having one-to-ones with people. It'll start to highlight people that you probably should be speaking to because you haven't had enough one-on-one time with them. So it's very interesting, the insights that it can give.
So this is the interesting part about all technology that I find, and let's look at CRMs, let's look at Microsoft. There are so many things that are involved in this technology, understanding it all, and this is what Paul was probably getting at when we talk about consultants not engaging with the technology. One person has put their hand up to say that they actually use that product out of the people that are on the webinar, which sort of says that the rest of them either don't know about it or just simply don't want to use it. And that's what I find a lot about using a CRM, is because usually the CRM comes in, it's reasonably intuitive on how people use it, but then getting into all the little parts that really should add benefit, we tend to find that isn't the bit that's sort of trained and developed into people. What would you think would, if you were talking to business leaders, irrespective of they're using your product or using another product, what would you say to them with regards to training and development on these type of tools to ensure that they're getting the maximum out of it? How would you generate that as an action point?
I think the risk is there's so much technology around. My analytics, I expect, is not because people don't want to use it. They're probably not aware of it. That's normally the response that we get. There's so many tools around, and it's difficult because you can blind people with those on offer. I think if you start with the value of you putting data into the system is that we will be able to do things for you in the future, such as automation, analytics, machine learning and intelligence to tell you what your next best thing is to do. But we need you to come on that journey with us, irrespective of the system that you're using. And then I think it's important for the business to understand what's the value that you want to get out of that data moving forwards. Is it automation? And there's some great automation engines out there. Is it analytics? Again, great analytics. So understanding how you're going to leverage that data, and then you'll enable the technology to present it back to the user, and you need to give them the return for them maintaining their systems, logging their calls, but also integrating the systems that you're using with CRM at the heart of it, integrating as much as you can into it so that you can leverage all this information. As soon as you can start to deliver that value back to the employee, and you can start to see how you'll save them a day, you'll make them more money, you'll tell them what to do next, that's where they'll really buy into the fact that they've put the data in the first place.
So it's really interesting, isn't it, when you start to sort of think about it in that way, that this is all about driving data, as we said, as being a currency that people can leverage into actual genuine revenue by understanding what's going on. And I'd love to, well, when we come off this webinar, I'll be interested in having a look at where I spend most of my time and look at how I can maximize that to make sure that I'm using my time in the most productive manner that humanly possible. And obviously, if you can spread that across your team, then you can start to save hours and hours of time. When we start to think about this from a client's point of view, because what we're talking about is how we can help our staff. If we can help our staff educate our clients a little bit more, then again, what it does, it provides clients more data that can reduce the overall recruitment cost, and therefore reduce their spend on recruitment costs without actually reducing your fee, your margin, whatever you're doing. So it's an important sort of view to sort of look at how data can actually benefit both the employee and their performance.
Chris, just an interesting point. You made mention earlier about often moving towards exit for business owners. Do you feel that the valuation of businesses ultimately, to some extent, will be dependent upon the accuracy of the data? Will the data have an impact on sale price in due course? Is this something we should become much more mindful of if we're building towards exiting our business?
I think it's critical. I think before now we've all been able to do things, and we recruit more entry-level recruiters, we train them. There's a numbers game. There's a law of averages. Get people doing the right amount of activity in the right way with the right training and the right rhetoric, and we'll create billers. And that will go to a certain extent. The machine will kick in and overtake a number of those activities, the matching, the outreach, the automation. And I think there'll be a point that you'll reach where you won't be able to grow at scale with the efficiencies and scale unless you've got the technology, and you can't enable the technology unless you've got the data. So absolutely, I think there'll be people that will exit this year where the value lever for their technology won't be particularly high, but those same businesses doing an event in 2 or 3 years time, depending on the size of the organization, they'll probably know that they won't be able to get to the right valuation of the next event unless they've got the technology and ultimately the data in the right place, because you can't just buy the tech, you need it to run off the data.
You made also reference, thanks Chris, to candidate tracking systems, or ATS, CTS systems. At the present time, very few recruitment consultancies use ATS or CTS systems. We tend to see those with the big corporations. Is this software that you think will become traditional tools of standard recruitment businesses in due course?
Absolutely. I mean, storing all of your client, your candidate interactions with all of the unstructured data like CVs should be the absolute minimum that people are looking to work with. As then they grow their businesses, they can enable better technologies. As long as they make the right first step, or if they've made the wrong first step to start with, they adjust what that step will be. Just being on the right platform, not necessarily ours, but being on the right platform that enables them to enable the technology in the future is a decision to make today or tomorrow. As to when that bears fruition for you, it could be 18 months, could be 12, 18 months away from now, but just building up that data and making sure that you're not limited in making that step when it's relevant for you.
Okay, thank you.
It's a quick question. From a business development perspective, one of the tools that I was always a fan of was Talent Insights, LinkedIn Talent Insights. I'm not a fan of LinkedIn, but I am a fan of Talent Insights. Do you think there'll come a time fairly quickly when your CRM will be able to produce probably as good a set of data, if not more specific and aligned to clients? So therefore, again, coming back to this business development perspective, you're really giving clients really informative data about them and their brand and the candidates they attract.
I think it's a great question, and absolutely, I think that the answer is yes. Clearly, I have to say that I am a fan of LinkedIn because we're a partner of theirs. I think Talent Insights has got some great functionality. What it doesn't have, though, and it will never have, is all of the information. We go back to siloed data. It's got information about market movers, industries, trend lines. It hasn't got the information of the candidates, what they say they're looking for, what their motivations are, why they didn't take the last offer, how many roles they've applied for with you as a business in a certain time period. So actually, if you look at the data that they do have and the data that you have, they're very different sets of data. If they could be augmented, that's the game changer. However, when we're not on an open session, I can probably show you in some proof of concept some of the things that we've been working on to actually give that visualization of insights of your database. That's where the data that our clients have today, as soon as we enable that technology, will add huge benefit. But that's exactly what they should be aspiring to do.
Yeah. So as we come towards sort of the end of this webinar, looking forward, going into the future, where do you see CRMs going? Do you see them integrating with ATS, CTS type systems? Where do you see that technology from a business point of view moving forward to help the consultants do their job?
Yes, I mean, I think the big gains are, there's lots of people talking about it. There's not many doing it, but true automation, and that's automation not just inside your CRM, but actually with all the other systems that you use. How can you connect? In inbound terms of business, from DocuSign to update a client record to alert your commercial department. How can you have a candidate that finishes an assignment or completes an interview to get a survey that asks for feedback that automatically tracks the sentiment of their response and alerts someone internally to do that? However, of course, if it's particularly positive, automatically pushes it onto LinkedIn. How can we look at different automations that add value to the business in different ways? So automation and analytics are the big, for me, two things this year that's really going to come into play. Integrations, just making sure the systems that you're using, they fit together. They're the big moves for 2021, in my opinion. Artificial intelligence, robotic process automation will continue to evolve. That's the exciting stuff. That towards the end of this year and next year, we'll start to see systems and technologies being made available to us that should plug into the data that we've got. And I think that's the anticipation, that's the excitement, knowing what's coming down the line. We just need to get our house in order before it comes.
Okay, so to summarize all of that, what you're saying is then, when we go back to that first slide, having siloed data is really hard. And I think I've said on numerous webinars that data is king, but extracting that data is queen. Because if you can't extract the data, you can't put your king and queen together. Therefore, you're not going to grow your kingdom type scenario. And so what we're saying is that having your technology being able to speak to each other and feed off each other is really important, so that you can extract the data required to help with the well-being of your consultants and to help with actually focusing on where the actual priority is for their work and where their best opportunities to actually make placements are. That is what we should be thinking about when we start to look at technology, because I have a conversation with lots of clients. It's not about just buying more technology and add it together. It's how does it link and how do you then extract that information to better your performance?
Yeah, if we get it all into the right place, the tools will be available to leverage and extract it. The tools should be able to come in and do that for us. I had one other example actually that kind of brings it to life. And again, this is technology that's available to everyone on the call. Let me see if I can quickly share a screen because it's just another nice free thing that you might not be aware of that you've got access to. You might recognize my screen now, if you can see that correctly, as Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
If you keep all of your CVs in the same place, Word's now already got the ability to look at various acronyms within CVs, and of course we know in recruitment these are used more and more. This is not a real person. When we click into the information that we've got within Word, he says, as he looks to find out which reference it's under, references, acronyms. This is available now. So this particular candidate, you can see CRM, BI, talks about lots of technical skill sets in this case. This preview pane over here is reading every other document that you've got access to where the data's in the same place. So in my case, it's looking at my local drives, it's looking at Microsoft SharePoint, and it's telling me that BI is business intelligence, CRM is customer relationship management. And when I say why, well, it's been referenced in a monthly meeting I had in February where CRM was referenced. So again, this is very simple now, AI and machine learning. Look, because all my documents are all in one place, it's using references from all these other things to tell me what this document means. So again, it's just another slight example we gave insights, but data in one place, Microsoft make technology available, you can immediately leverage it straight away because all your data is in one place.
Okay, and does that mean that you could put your data into places like SharePoint? And I know Nicole's going to be screaming at me at this moment and saying, no, no, no. You know, into places like SharePoint and then be able to search that data as well as a CRM could search it to ensure that you're getting the same candidates back. Because one of the things that I find that, you know, people buy candidates over and over and over again because they don't actually go into their database and search initially in their database.
Yeah, I mean, if you're putting them all into a central data store, SharePoint's a good place to do that actually, because you get great searching ability in SharePoint of doing it, but you'll also get all this functionality that all comes out of the box as well.
Okay, so if you could summarize then what you think, you know, what companies should be looking at now and then what they should be looking at over the next 12 months, then we can start to sort of move things forward and sort of wrap things up, because I think people are looking for a summary because there's been so much sort of rich content that's come in today and it's sort of trying to connect it all together. It'd be great for just one all-round summary. Yeah,
so again, you know, we've not really talked about our services, and I don't really intend to, but I think if I was running a recruitment business again now, I would be looking at what are the technology decisions that I need to make today and tomorrow to enable us for the technology that's available tomorrow. How can I ensure that all of these great systems that I'm taking demos of outside of my core CRM, how can we make sure that as we're leveraging those, I'm getting the benefit of the data that we're building and we're bringing it again back into one single place? Because if you can just make sure that everything is in one place, not necessarily understanding that, not necessarily getting your consultants to put all of that information in, but how can you aggregate and collect as much data as possible at the moment on every line of business that you do? So your financial information, your marketing information, your candidate information, your client information, your placement information, all of it as much as possible, at least into one area. Then start to keep your eye on the technologies that are becoming available. But consider, you will not, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion at the moment, you will not be able to run the same recruitment business that you run today with the same people, with the same processes that you'll be running in 5 years' time. The machine and the automation, the analytics will largely take over a lot of those processes. You will, however, be able to be far more efficient, make far more meaningful conversations, and take far more important decisions based on insightful data, because you're starting to build that in one single place now today instead of multiple silos.
What you're saying is then, from a competitor advantage point of view, the weaker your technology, the less competitive you will be in the future, because those that have that type of technology will be quicker and faster to the marketplace and be able to provide your candidates, so your consultants, with better data, and they therefore point them in a more productive and more revenue generating process.
Yeah, by the time you're getting excited about a role that arguably you shouldn't be working on, one of your competitors is working on the role they should be working on, and the machines already identify the candidates they should be speaking to. So, you know, instead of shouting around the office or sending an email or team saying, does anyone know anyone for this role that I've got? Someone else has already got the best recommendations because their database has told them who they are. that's where we'll be.
Which means that the database becomes the holy grail. And then the question is, how do you get more candidates into your database, which then has a wider conversation regarding sort of marketing strategies and everything else?
I think so. I think Rise of the Marketeer is going to be huge again, massive. Marketing automation, nurturing, that will be absolutely critical, because we'll live on data.
Yeah, totally agree, Chris.
Chris and Kevin, thank you very much. It was,
Thank you.
I look at technology quite a lot, and I really enjoy the tech side. But that really sort of enlightened even more to what's coming and what agencies should be doing, what could be doing. Next week, as we move on into next week's webinar, we're going to flip that, where this week we've looked at the company and the consultants. Next week, we're going to look at how we use data to actually procure clients. So opening clients' doors, developing your existing clients, building new services, and streamlining your clients' recruitment processes. So again, it'll be a very interesting webinar about using data to do that. To top it off this week, just before everyone disappears, Jump is just about to launch a new training opportunity for 10 companies only, where we'll be running a training boot camp for 12 weeks, where we will be drilling people on the basics of recruitment. And we think, as the market is now coming out of lockdown, we have the roadmap. It's really important that we get people ready to sort of roll. So drilling those basics are really important. So if anyone wants to give me a call about that or drop me an email, feel free to do that. Again, Kevin and Chris, thank you very much for your time. Very, very, very enlightening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you much for your time. This has been Jump Advisory Recruitment Discussion. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, all.
Thank you, guys.